We all recognize this face, Sanjay Gupta from CNN, and his recommendations for intellectual wellness are to move more. So get some exercise, discover new things, get good rest and sleep. He calls it connection for protection, and that means connect with other people. And nourish, he does a sharp mnemonic. So sharp is for slash sugar. We can all eat less sugar. Hydrate, he wants you to hydrate more with water and appropriate products, not your diet Pepsis and your coffees, but actually things that are good for your body. You're adding omega-3 acids, reducing your portion sizes, and plan meals ahead. So intellectual wellness can be summed up to, in the morning, after a good night's sleep, take a brisk walk with a friend at a new park, talk, and have a picnic. But please push yourself, even if it's small things each day, to develop your intellectual wellness. Next slide, please. So moving on to physical wellness. Physical wellness, optimal physical wellness is met through the combination of good exercise and eating habits. So the benefits of looking good and feeling great lead to psychological benefits of enhanced self-esteem, self-control, determination, and a sense of direction. So physical wellness follows the tenets of it's better to consume foods and beverages that enhance good health rather than those that impair it. And it's better to be physically fit than out of shape. So my recommendation is you have one body. Please, please take care of it. If you're thinking about foods, the most nutrient-dense foods, start with vegetables, then move to fruits, then legumes, then whole grains, nuts, and seeds. If you're going to eat junk food, please do so in moderation. And if you feed your body garbage, it's going to feel like garbage. The ChooseMyPlate.gov picture on your left shows kind of the same thing that I was talking about. You really want nutrient-dense food. So your fruits and veggies should have half of your plate. Your lean meat should be less than a quarter. You have whole grains, and then you have dairy that should also be sprinkled in, or dairy substitutes if you are dairy-free. And I would like to draw your attention to things like stress eating, which I'm sure most of us have done over the last 16 months with the COVID pandemic. So this is when people use food to help them deal with stressful situations. And why do people do this? Because it makes them feel good in the short term, that comfort food, that feel-good food. But what happens if you do this and you put on 40 or 50 pounds over the COVID pandemic, like some of my patients? That doesn't make your body feel good. So just be aware. If you are a stress eater, please be aware of this. And another topic that's important is food addiction. So you can have a food addiction just like you can have an addiction to nicotine, to alcohol, to drugs, and understand that it can be a sugar addiction as well. Sugar acts on your brain just like the drugs of abuse. Just like your marijuana, just like your cocaine, just like your heroin, just like so many other things, to actually release dopamine, which is your feel-good hormone, and can act like the drug of abuse. So people can physically have a sugar addiction to try and increase their mood and increase their hits of dopamine, which is the neurotransmitter in their brain, which helps you feel like this. Next slide, please. So I get a lot of questions regarding, should I buy organic? Should I not buy organic? I'm on a limited income. What would you recommend? So this is a personal decision for everyone. So organic, they are obviously devoid of pesticides and less chemicals than in conventional foods. But there is a list that is a dirty dozen of 2021 that comes out each year with, it's typically the most pesticide-laden fruit. So strawberries are actually number 6th year in a row. I didn't realize that until I looked this up. 90% of them had at least one pesticide after one washing, and 30% have residues of 10 or more pesticides. And you can see the others in this list. So if I was going to spend my hard-earned money and I had to make a decision, I would probably say, you know what? I'm probably gonna buy the organic strawberries, but I will buy conventional bananas per se. So just gives you an idea. If you buy 100% organic, that's fantastic, but not everyone can do that, and a lot of us have to make choices. Next slide, please. Now moving on, when you're actually in the grocery store, I just want to give you a tidbit into a grocery store tip. So when you get to the grocery store, if you've ever noticed the 4 or 5 digit code on your fruits and vegetables, produce, there's a code and they're actually international. So this is a price lookup code, which is called a PLU code. So it's same Kroger to Meijer to, Target. And it's basically a 4-digit code on the left, you can see on the banana, is for conventionally grown produce. But if you look to the code on the right, it's a 5-digit code and it starts with a 9. That denotes that it's organically grown. So if you don't have any sign, you can actually look at the sticker and figure out where your fruit, if it's conventionally grown or organic again. Next slide, please. So continuing with physical wellness. Physical wellness, one of the hallmarks is please exercise, please move more. And basically the Goya is get off your fanny and do it. So please pick something that you enjoy. I don't expect you to put on your running shoes and go run a 5K or a half mile or anything like that. I want you to start slow and increase gradually. So if you don't get any physical activity, get out and walk 2 blocks. You know, and if that was okay today, then tomorrow you do 3 blocks and you can slowly increase, because otherwise you're going to be in a world of hurt if you think you're going to go out and run a 5K and you're not used to that. I would also like to remind you that this does not have to be done in a gym. So when my kids were little and my husband was working and it was my day off, I had the kids and I didn't have anyone to watch the kids. So what did I do? I took them to a park so they could burn off some energy, and I would walk the park and walk around the park so I could continue to keep an eye on them. I would play tag with them. I would do things like that. It doesn't have to be in a gym. And as we all know, over the last 16 or so months, sometimes the gyms weren't open, and so we sometimes had to make do. Can you use weights with soup can out of your pantry? What can you do to get some physical activity, but we all can move more? Next slide, please. So moving on, an important category in physical wellness is also sleep. We all probably could use more of it. So please, please put your phone down. I, just like you, am guilty of watching TikTok until 2 a.m., but please, you will be sleep hungover the next day if you continue to do that, or even one night of doing that. So please put your phone down. Please shut off the TV. These are just simple things. If you need to, take the TV out of your room. Avoid caffeine, alcohol, drugs, nicotine in general, but I would also say primarily before you go to bed. It's ideal to get up at the same time and go to bed at the same time, but some of us work in professions that we can't do that. We have to work nights, weekends, holidays, afternoon shift, but you do the best you can. Adults, they recommend 7 to 9 hours of sleep. Kids and teens are 9.5 minimum, and babies are 16 to 18 hours. When you think about going to bed, I also think of myself as well as a lot of my patients, and they say, you know what, I've got so many things running through my mind. So what do you do? What do you do with all the things that are running through your mind? You know what I say? I keep pens and I keep Post-it notes next to my bed. So if I have something that's racing through my mind, I can get out of my mind and I can write it down. So I don't have this constantly going through my mind. Well, you got to do this and you got to do that and you got to do this tomorrow. And what it does is it gives me a list to do, but then it also comes up with something that I like to do and term a critical task list. So from my list or from my thoughts or my mind's racing, I come up with a Post-it note. And you see it only has 2 numbers on. It is a critical task, meaning these are critical things that absolutely need to get done tomorrow. Sometimes it's as simple as, you know, we are completely out of milk and all the kids ate eggs for breakfast and now I need to get milk. But sometimes it's more than that. Sometimes I have to sit down and redo my resume. I have to make this phone call. But you need to come up with a critical task list that's 1, maybe 2, but no more than that. Absolute things you have to get done the next day. Because we all have a running list of probably 20, 30 plus things that we could do each and every day, but break it down, make it simple for yourself. Do a critical task list and get all that stuff out of your mind. Expunge it out of your mind so you can get a good night's sleep. And when I think of doing this, it makes me think, if anyone's a Harry Potter fan, it makes me think of Dumbledore and the Pensieve. And the picture of Dumbledore where he puts his wand to his forehead and he takes out all these memories and all these thoughts and he puts it into the Pensieve. And that's what it is me doing. That's what I think that I'm doing. And I'm trying to relax my mind and I'm trying to get these things so I don't need to perseverate over them and I can go to sleep. Next slide, please. Now, bringing up self-care. Self-care is such an important thing. And I think that we pass on this a lot of times and it really needs to be a priority. So what I'd like you to do is flip your sheet of paper that you had that looked like this. And I would like you to flip it over. And on a quarter of the sheet on the back side, I would like you to write self-care/reset button. And I would like you to write down what hits your reset button. What is it that you do for self-care that allows you to continue to do what you're doing? And I want you to make it a priority. I want you to schedule it. I tried for years to, I'll just fit it in here. I'll just fit it in there. But I could never fit it in. There was never enough time. So please make it a priority. Write it on your calendar, just like your kids' sports schedule, just like your doctor's appointments. It's just as important, if not important, to the rest of the things that you're doing it. So what do? Things that people have told me are travel, get a massage, go out with my friends, do something relaxing, read a book, garden, be outside, hunt, enjoy nature. There's multiple different things. Each person is different. So I need you to think about what you do for self-care, write it down, and please, please begin to schedule it. Next slide, please. So let's talk about balance. So balance, I feel like you have a life-work balance, and sometimes it gets to be too heavy with work and life. I'm guilty of this past year with the pandemic. I work in the emergency department. I'm an emergency department physician. We have gotten slammed, and my balance has been shifted over these last 16 months to work, and now I'm trying to shift it back to focus more on my life. And my question to you is, are you giving more to other people than you have for yourself? And that's a personal question for each and every person. Some people say yes, some people say no, but I really want you to reflect internally and think about this. And when I think about this, I always think about getting on an airplane, and when they say, please, if we have a problem and we need oxygen, please put your own oxygen mask on before assisting others. I liken this to life, and I really feel like you need to take care of yourself before taking care of others. You can take care of others without taking care of yourself, but then you're going to have a lot of problems that develop because you are not doing self-care. You're not focusing on your wellness. You are not focusing on your health. And you can give everything you got to other people for a very long period of time, but I need you to prioritize yourself in this, and I need you to give more to yourself so you can then go out and help other people than just going over and helping other people. And understand that balance is constantly evolving. My balance this year is different from my balance next year, which may be different from my balance in a month. So it's something that's constantly evolving and you're working towards. Next slide, please. So I had to laugh when I was at work and I saw this schedule and I thought, wow, that's not so well. Every single day. Next slide, please. So I would say that that is not the example of occupational wellness. Moving on to the next category of wellness. Occupational dimension is basically recognizing personal satisfaction and enrichment in one's life through work. So you're traveling a path towards your occupational wellness, and you'll contribute unique gifts, skills, and talents to work that is both personally meaningful as well as rewarding. Next slide, please. And I think that we need to also discuss something that is very important, that is pervasive in our community and especially in the helping professions. I would like to discuss post-traumatic stress injury or post-traumatic stress disorder briefly. So post-traumatic stress injury is kind of the new kid on the block. And it's basically a biological injury that develops after a person has experienced or witnessed a traumatic event. So post-traumatic stress disorder is also very similar to this, but post-traumatic stress disorder focuses more on the psychological and the psychiatric disorder than the whole body injury. And what they're trying to do by coming up with the term post-traumatic stress injury is to really decrease the stigma that's associated with post-traumatic stress disorder and the psychiatric disturbance. So symptoms of PTSI or PTSD can surface through flashbacks, nightmares, anxiety, depression, anger, and negative thoughts, which may increase or actually last for months or years. It's known to severely interfere with a person's daily work and home life. And while many people have difficulty adjusting to and coping with the daily requirements of work and home life after experiencing traumatic events, they may improve and completely heal from these injuries with access to psychological support, spiritual care, and other types of help. So please understand that this is out there. I picked this picture because this is a picture of an ER physician who, despite their best efforts, lost a 19-year-old patient, and the patient died. And I can tell you from personal experience, I have done this exact same thing. And sometimes in healthcare, helping professions, or even in our daily lives, we just need to do this, and we just need to walk away for a minute to just get things under control. Next slide, please. So this is a picture of Officer Jessica Nagel Wilson, who was shot and killed when she responded to an animal complaint at a house just before 9 p.m. in July of 2002. As she exited her patrol car, a man standing on a porch suddenly opened fire on her with a shotgun filled with number 6 birdshot, striking her in the face, neck, and stomach. She was able to return fire and wounded the suspect, and although she was wearing her vest, she suffered fatal wounds and succumbed to her wounds and died. She was 26 years old. Now, I would like you to put yourselves in the spot of the responders. What about the police who showed up on this? And this is their colleague. What about the firefighters and the paramedics and the other EMS people and all the people who went? What about the ER physician and the ER nurses and the ER techs who all saw this poor woman die, right? That is a very traumatic event. And this happens on a daily basis and sometimes multiple times a day. I can tell you from experience that the 2 officers who were first on this scene were actually firefighters and paramedics. And I can tell you, because I'm married to one of them, that he suffered from post-traumatic stress disorder for a very long period of time. And with help and support, he was able to overcome this and is able to function. Now, the other provider who worked with him on the ambulance at the fire department, we actually saw him. He was on the news because he had lost his job, he has lost his family, he has lost his house, and he was homeless, living on a park bench in Metro Detroit area. So a GoFundMe support account was set up for him, and they're trying to get in for alcohol and rehab, as well as post-traumatic stress disorder. But this happens in our communities every day. This happens to people that we work with. So please, please be aware of this, and please seek help or help others seek help if you feel like they are suffering from this. Next slide, please. In occupational wellness, I'd like to describe an area that I consider work, but it's actually unpaid work. So let's talk about what unpaid work is. Work is performed by a family member who is not being paid. So things like caregiving, childcare, cooking, cleaning, shopping, errands, yard work, house maintenance, car maintenance, anything that happens in and around your home. So in the US, when they did studies on this, women average 4 hours of unpaid work every day, and men average 2.5 hours. In India, this is a much starker difference. Women average 6 hours a day, men average less than 1 hour a day. In Norway, the gap is closer, with women doing 3.5 hours a day and men doing 3 hours a day. Next slide, please. So there is actually no country where the unpaid work gap is 0. And if you take all countries, on average, women do 7 years more of unpaid work than men over their lifetimes. That is the equivalent to a bachelor's and a master's degree. That is incredible. In 2003, the Bureau of Labor Statistics conducted a national time use survey that measured housework and childcare hours, and it said that men have more time for recreational activities, playing games, and exercises. However, women did more unpaid work and more work altogether. Now, I'm not saying this is true of every household, but I just want to draw your attention that this is definitely something that is occurring. And take a look at your own household. Next slide, please. And I would question, in your own household, do you have an equal partnership with you and your significant other? The 3 R's are that recognize that unpaid work is being done, reduce the number of hours that unpaid work takes, and redistribute this work that can't be reduced so men and women share it more equitably. So can you delegate some of it out? Are your kids old enough to take some responsibility? You don't need to put up their dishes in the dishwasher if they're old enough to wash their dishes and put them in the dishwasher. Give them some responsibility, okay? And you can take out anything you want in the house, right? But you need to put it away before you take something else out. That is a rule that we have in our house. Sometimes it gets abided by, sometimes it does not. But we try and do stuff like that so not one person is burdened with all the unpaid work and labor. And this is also something that you can think about, what in your multitasking can you delegate out? So say, for example, when I used to have a babysitter come to the house when the kids were little, I would actually pay them a couple dollars more an hour to fold laundry and put it away. And it was a lifesaver because it cut down on this unpaid work. Next slide, please. So a few years ago, I went to ACEP. ACEP is a national convention of emergency medicine physicians. About 10,000 ER physicians descend on any given city, and we have a conference. And there I met Pamela Benson, who is actually the first woman in medicine to train in emergency medicine. And emergency medicine is relatively new kid on the block. It's only about 50 years old in terms of board certification, and it's a relatively new subspecialty. And I asked her, I met her and I said, you know what? I'm a new attending. I'm new at this. Give me a life piece of advice. And she said, find someone wonderful to watch your children and someone fantastic to clean your house. And I thought, that's the career advice she gave me, huh? Next slide, please. And then I realized that Yoda had spoken, because she was alluding to this unpaid work that needs to be distributed, right? And you're not going to have time to do it. You're not going to have time to do it as a full-time working physician. Your husband isn't going to have time to do it as a full-time working firefighter. You need to really do this and delegate out. Next slide, please. So moving on to emotional wellness. So the tenets of emotional wellness is it's better to be aware of and accept our feelings than to deny them. I consider emotions like tunnels. You just have to go through them. It's okay to cry. It's okay to be angry, but you just have to go through that emotion. And this is something that in the tenet, it's better to be optimistic in our approach to life than pessimistic. And this is also something that in emotional wellness, you want to have the ability to manage effectively through challenge and change, because you know what? This last year and a half has been nothing but challenge and change. And good emotional wellness allows you to navigate it. It's okay to go through all your emotions. And the ones listed here aren't the only ones. But you know what I'm saying. It's okay to feel all these emotions. And please, please feel your emotions and don't shove them down inside. Next slide, please. So in speaking with an optimist versus a pessimist, these are the things that come to mind. So Tigger is an ever optimist, always happy, always bouncing. And then Eeyore is a perpetual pessimist. Now, I understand that you can't always be a Tigger, but ask yourself, who would you rather be around? Remember how I said, practice gratitude, focus on the positives? Eeyore, I feel like, is constantly focusing on the negatives, and that's not how you want to be. You want to focus on the positives and all the good things in your life. So understanding that some days we're Tigger and some days we are Eeyore, but really strive to look for the positives and try not to be a pessimist. And I guess my question to you is, who would you rather hang out with? Next slide, please. Let's talk about compassion fatigue. So compassion fatigue, especially in helping professions, is very pervasive. So this is profound emotional and physical exhaustion. It's the erosion of all things that keep us connected to our helping and caregiving roles. It can have loss of empathy, hope, and compassion. And this term was actually coined in 1992. And if you have compassion fatigue, you may exhibit symptoms of emotional, cognitive, behavioral, as well as physical symptoms that can do things like lower your concentration. You can have feelings of helplessness or numbness, irritability, lack of satisfaction, withdrawal. You can have aches and pains and headaches, feeling overwhelmed, hopeless, powerless when hearing about other people's suffering. And it can also be feelings of detachment. And this goes back to, how do you perform self-care and how do you support yourself? I've learned that I start to really have compassion fatigue if I work too many shifts in a row, 8 out of 9 days, 9 out of 12, 13 out of 14. This gets eroded. So think about it, understand it, reflect on your own self and see if you're exhibiting symptoms of this and what you can do to change it. Next slide, please. So let's talk about burnout. This is pervasive. This is highly prevalent, especially in our helping fields. So this is emotional exhaustion, which is the fatigue that comes from caring too much for too long, depersonalization, which is the depletion of empathy, caring, and compassion, and a decreased sense of accomplishment, which is an unconquerable sense of futility, like nothing you're doing is making any difference, right? This is pervasive, and please reflect again and see, are you exhibiting any of these symptoms, and what can we do to change it? Next slide, please. So in 2019, Medscape did a national physician burnout, depression, and suicide report, right? This is before the pandemic. So the physicians who are most burned out are urology, actually, at 54%. Emergency medicine, which is one of my specialties, was 48%. Almost 50% were burned out. This was prior to the COVID pandemic. And the lowest one right now, or was in 2019, was public health and preventative medicine. Where do you think they are now after the COVID pandemic? They haven't put out the numbers for the new burnout, depression, and suicide report, but the numbers, I'm sure, have done nothing but gone up. Next slide, please. So moving from that topic, let's move on to financial wellness, because you know what? I don't want to work for the rest of my life. I would like time to enjoy it. I would like to be able to save money and enjoy my life and retire at some point in time. And to do that, I think we need to have smart financial plans. So for financial wellness, let's talk about the difference between a want and a need. So want is a desire to possess or do something you wish for. It's for fun or for leisure, but it's something you can live without. A need, it's essential or very important for you to work and live. And it's usually something that's reoccurring. So think about this. Next time you say, I need that, do you really, or do you just want it? So if you have a high want and high need, if you're looking at this picture to your left, I would recommend pursuing it. If it's a low need, but a high want, maybe you should prioritize that. Low need, low want, probably avoid, save your hard-earned money. And if you have a low want, but a high need, you may need to recognize it and see if it's actually something that you need. So let's move on. Next slide, please. So I had something that I decided to do. I went down through my bills and I wrote down everything that's a recurring monthly payment. And this is what I came up with: mortgage, cars, loans, credit cards, cell phones, internet, insurances, utilities, subscriptions, groceries, maintenance, and entertainment, and dining. And there's my entire paycheck, right? So I thought, how can we scale back? How can we think about this a little bit more? And what are your reoccurring monthly payments? What is it that you spend your money on? And let's talk about it. What I want you to do, not necessarily today, but when you have time, maybe over the next 3 weeks, is I actually want you to, next slide, please, get out your bank statements and get out your credit card statements with a highlighter. That's why it's highlighted. And I want you to go through and highlight your one-time expenses of greater than $50, your reoccurring monthly purchases, and your online purchases. And I want you to reflect on that. I want you to think about, how many hours did you have to work to buy that? And is it worth it? And for successful expense management, we may need to cut some stuff out. So I heard a figure that says the average person has 12 impulse buys a month, which equals $267, right? That's a lot of money. But anyone with a Costco membership knows that that can be done in one Costco trip. Next slide, please. So this is another thing that I did, is I went through with my expenses and I broke down what is fixed, what is variable, and some of my big rocks. The big rocks being those things that I said, the one-time occurring expense, online, and the reoccurring payments. And I went through, and I would recommend, if you have a chance, to actually go through and write these down. I did it on a full sheet of paper because I couldn't do a smaller sheet of paper, but I just went down. And when you go through all of your information, write down what is a fixed, what is a variable, and what is a big rock, because as you can see on this chart, there's multiple different things you can go through and change. And this just happened to be my chart. My big rocks personally were Amazon online purchases, Costco and Target. My husband's big rocks were more Home Depot, toys, Cabela's, hunting, guns, tools. But you can have all sorts of big rocks that weigh you down. And that's what they're doing, is they're weighing you down because they're keeping you from financial independence, right?
Mhm. Mm.
Dr. Albers, I'm sorry. I think the breakout session ended, and it looks like it bumped us back into the main room. You are on mute, and I think we do have all of our attendees in this session room now. Oh, you're still on mute there.
Oh, now am I back?
You are back.
Okay, so did you miss the last last minute or two? Shoot.
Yeah, probably just about the last minute. But I think all the attendees that were in your session are in this one, along with the rest of the attendees from the conference. So if you have any overarching takeaways on wellness, I think everybody would appreciate it, but then we will be moving into our next breakout sessions very shortly here.
Okay, so I would just say that I think life is multitasking and juggling a bunch of rubber balls, right? And if you think about it, these are all the things you're doing in your multitasking each time. And then I want to throw in the concept of a glass ball. And you need to think about what your top priorities are. And those are the glass balls, because if you drop one of these, it's going to be permanently damaged. So I need you to reflect on your wellness goals and think, what is a priority for you? What are your glass balls? And what are the rubber balls that can potentially drop but come back to you as well? So it's important. It's a constant, a balance. It's something that you're constantly striving and working towards, your self-care, what your priorities have been and what they are now, and how you can continue to improve your health and wellness, because it's a constantly evolving thing. And I would also recommend that if you have the ability to say no, and if by doing so, you can actually concentrate on the things that are really important to you, and it's okay to say no and practice things that are improving your health and wellness. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We really appreciate all of the very practical takeaways from your presentation today. I think it was very timely.
Yes, and I can stay on if people have specific questions for me. I can stay on if there's a break or a breakout session, if anyone has specific questions.
Perfect. Thank you so much. And we will make your slides available on our website if they aren't already.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. And for everyone else, we are on a quick break until 11 o'clock. Our next two breakout sessions will be primary care options in rural healthcare, or understanding telehealth reimbursement, best practices, and overcoming technology barriers. You can navigate to the various breakout rooms at the bottom of your screen. Thank you.
I don't know.